The day my granddaughter Ava refused to hug me goodbye, I recognized the look on her face. I had worn it myself at 9 years old. It was Christmas Day, 2023. Simone's house smelled like pine and cinnamon and the sweet potato pie I had brought over in the same ceramic dish I'd been using for 32 years. The table was set beautifully. Darnell had put on soft music. Nat King Cole, the Christmas album, the one that makes everything feel like it ought to be okay. And for a little while, it was. Ava was sitting next to me, all braids and gap-toothed smiles, telling me about something that happened at school. I was listening, or I thought I was listening, but then I looked down at her hands wrapped around her fork, and something in me shifted into a gear I didn't even know was still running. "Baby, hold your fork like this." I reached over and adjusted her fingers. "You're not scooping. You press down and lift." Ava looked at her fork, then at me. "And you know," I continued, not reading the room, not reading her face, not reading anything except the script that had been running in my head since 1987. Beverly's granddaughter, little Camille, she just won the school etiquette competition. 3rd year in a row. The table went quiet. Not the comfortable kind of quiet. The other kind. Darnell looked down at his plate. Simone looked at the wall behind my head. And Ava, sweet, bright-eyed Ava, who had been talking to me nonstop for 20 minutes about her class hamster, slowly put her fork down, pushed back her chair, and walked down the hallway to her bedroom without saying a word. The door didn't slam. That almost made it worse. I sat there with my hands in my lap, surrounded by good food and Christmas music and the people I loved most in the world, and felt more alone than I had in years. Nobody said anything. We finished dinner. I helped wash dishes. I hugged Simone at the door. She hugged me back, but it was the hug of someone being polite, not someone who wanted to hold on. I drove home in the dark, alone, and sat in my car in front of my own house for 45 minutes, not ready to go inside, not sure what I was waiting for. I am Robin Elaine Washington. I am 68 years old. I have a master's degree in social work. I have 40 years of friendships. I have a daughter who is kind and capable and doing everything right, and a granddaughter who draws pictures with purple skies and laughs so hard she snorts. And somewhere along the way, without ever meaning to, without ever choosing it, I became the very thing I swore I would never be. My mother never told me I was enough. Not once. Not in 63 years of her being alive. I swore I would be different. I said I love you every single day. I showed up to every recital, every game, every parent-teacher conference. I sacrificed a career I wanted so I could be present in a way my mother never was. And somehow, my daughter still grew up feeling like she was always auditioning for my love, and never quite getting the part. How does that happen? How do you love someone with everything you have, and still get it so completely heartbreakingly wrong? That question is what this story is about. It took me 68 years to find the answer, and I almost ran out of time. Her name was Ida Mae Collins, and she was born in 1918 in Sunflower County, Mississippi, the 6th of 8 children in a sharecropper family that owned nothing but the clothes on their backs, and a faith so deep it had to be, because there was nothing else to hold on to. I never knew my grandmother well. She died when I was 11, and by then she was already more ghost than woman, thin and quiet and smelling of camphor, sitting in a rocking chair on my mother's porch, like she was waiting for something that was never going to arrive. But I knew her through my mother, Dorothea, and I knew her through the shape of the silences she left behind. Ida Mae raised her children the only way she knew how, which was the only way anyone had ever shown her. You work, you sacrifice, you protect. You do not show weakness. You do not make promises you cannot keep. And above all, you do not love out loud, because the world Ida Mae lived in, the Mississippi of the 1920s and 30s and 40s, was a world that would take from you anything it saw you treasuring. This was not cruelty. Let me be clear about that. In Ida Mae's world, a black woman who wore her heart on her sleeve was a black woman who could be broken. Softness was a liability. Tenderness was a risk. So she loved her children the only way that felt safe, through action, never words. Through biscuits made before dawn. Through working double shifts at the White family's house so her kids could have new shoes for Easter. Through silence that meant I'm handling it. Don't worry, rather than I don't care. The problem was, her children couldn't read that language. My mother, Dorothea, everyone called her Dot, was the 3rd child. Smart as a whip, my grandmother used to say, which was the closest thing to a compliment Dot ever received from her. When Dot was 12 years old, she won a scholarship to the best colored school in Atlanta. The letter came on a Tuesday morning in June. Dot told me this story exactly once when I was 30 years old and visiting her in the hospital after a minor heart procedure. She was loopy on pain medication, more honest than she usually allowed herself to be. "I ran home so fast," she said, staring at the ceiling. "I had that letter in my hand and I was running and I kept thinking Mama's gonna be so proud. Mama's gonna hug me." She was quiet for a moment. She read the letter, folded it up neat, set it on the table. Then she put an extra piece of chicken on my plate. Dot turned to look at me. Her eyes were dry. They were always dry. "That was it," she said. "That was Mama saying congratulations." Dot waited for more. She waited for 40 years. It never came. My mother, Dorothea Washington May Collins, built her life on 2 convictions. The first, she would work harder than anyone expected of her. And she did. She became a registered nurse in 1962 when Black women in nursing were barely tolerated in most Atlanta hospitals. She worked 35 years, nights and weekends and holidays, and never called in sick once. Not once. The second conviction, she would be a better mother than Ida May. She tried. Lord knows she tried. But Dot had learned to love the way Ida May loved. Through sacrifice, through provision, through showing up even when it cost her everything. What she never learned, because no one ever taught her, was how to love through presence, through sitting down, through asking, "How are you feeling? What do you need?" "You were wonderful today." She knew how to work for us. She never learned how to be with us. I was born in 1956, the only child of Dorothea and Samuel Washington. My father died when I was 7, a car accident on I-20 on a Tuesday night in November, and then it was just me and Dot in the house on Peyton Road. And the silence got louder after that because there was no one to fill it up. Dot worked. I stayed with neighbors, with the church ladies, with whoever was available. I learned to be self-sufficient because I had no other choice. And Dot took that self-sufficiency as proof that she was doing right by me. What I needed her to see was that I wasn't self-sufficient. I was lonely. I had good grades because good grades made Dot nod with something that looked almost like approval. I had friends because friends filled the house with noise, and noise was better than silence. I had ambition because ambition was the language Dot understood. And I compared myself to other girls, constantly, because Dot compared me too. Not meanly. I want to be careful here, because it was never mean. It was more like, Beverly got an A+. What did you get? And then when I said A-, well, almost. Almost. That word followed me through childhood like a second shadow. The year I made the cheerleading squad, I had wanted it for 3 years, practiced in the backyard every single day, worn out 2 pairs of sneakers. Dot's response was, "Good. Now don't let it distract you from your grades." Not, "I'm proud of you." Not, "You worked so hard for this." Just, "Don't let it distract you." I put the photograph from that first game, me in my uniform, grinning so hard my face hurt, in a shoebox under my bed. I never showed it to her. I married James Washington in 1981. James was the opposite of everything I had grown up with. Warm, generous with his praise. The kind of man who said, "That was delicious, baby," after every single meal, even when it wasn't. Who told me I was beautiful on ordinary Tuesdays when I was wearing house clothes and hadn't done my hair. I didn't know what to do with that kind of love at first. It made me uncomfortable. It felt like a trick. It wasn't a trick. James was just a man who had been loved correctly as a child, and it showed. We had 2 children, Devin, born in 1982, and Simone, born in 1986. Devin was easy in the way first children sometimes are. Or maybe he just fit the shape I expected. He was steady, logical, goal-oriented. He went to Morehouse on a partial scholarship, got into medical school, became an orthopedic surgeon in Houston. Every milestone arrived on schedule, like a train I had personally willed into existence. Simone was different. Simone was feeling before she was thinking. She cried when songs moved her. She drew pictures constantly, whole reams of paper covered in purple skies and orange oceans and people with enormous eyes. She loved her brother with a fierceness that sometimes tipped into worship. She was, from the beginning, the most emotionally alive person in any room she entered. And God help me, I didn't know what to do with that. I knew how to recognize achievement. I knew how to measure progress. I knew how to push. I did not know how to simply sit with someone. So with Simone, I pushed. I don't remember exactly when the pattern started. That's the thing about generational trauma. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't knock on the door and say, "Hello, I'm the wound your grandmother couldn't name and your mother couldn't heal, and now I've come for you." It just settles in, quiet and patient, and starts running the household. I remember Simone at 9 years old, bringing home a drawing of our family. Crayon on notebook paper, our little faces all round and bright-eyed. James was in the middle, tall and smiling. Simone had drawn me with a crown, which made my chest squeeze with something tender. And then I looked at Devon's figure, taller than everyone else, a gold star next to his name. And I said, without thinking, without meaning any harm, "Why is Devon taller than everyone in the picture?" Simone looked at her drawing, then at me. Then she took it back. She stopped showing me her drawings after that. I didn't notice for almost 2 years. I remember Simone at 17, getting her acceptance letter from Spelman College. It was a Tuesday. Letters always seemed to arrive on Tuesdays in our family. She came running into the kitchen, waving the envelope, and her face was incandescent, lit from the inside. And for one perfect second, I saw Dot running home with her scholarship letter, and I felt the ache of everything my mother hadn't said. And then I said, "That's wonderful, baby. Did you apply for any scholarships? Devon got that full ride to Morehouse, remember? You want to make sure you're not leaving money on the table." The light went out of her face, not all at once, slowly, like a dimmer switch. "I'll look into it," she said, and she went upstairs to her room, and she didn't come back down for dinner. I told myself she was tired. I told myself she was processing. I told myself a lot of things over the years that turned out not to be true. James died in 2019, 3 months after my mother did. Pancreatic cancer, swift and merciless, the way that particular cancer tends to be. We had 8 months from diagnosis to the end, and I am grateful for those 8 months, even though they were the hardest of my life, because at least I got to say goodbye. I said everything I needed to say to James. I held his hand. I told him what he'd meant to me, what kind of man he was, how much better I was for having known him. I did not think in those months about what I hadn't said to my children. I was too busy surviving. After James died, I expected Simone to come home, not to move back. She had her life, her husband, her 3-year-old daughter, but I expected her to come, to stay a while, to sit with me the way you sit with someone who is new to grief. She came for the funeral. She stayed 4 days. Then she went home. I told myself she had her own family to think about. I told myself she was grieving too, in her own way. I told myself it wasn't personal, but it was quiet in my house. And in the quiet, something I had been ignoring for a long time started to get very loud. The morning after Christmas, I called Beverly. Beverly Hartley has been my best friend since 1979. We met at a social work conference in Birmingham, realized we had grown up 8 miles apart in Atlanta, and somehow never crossed paths, and have been inseparable ever since. She is 4 years older than me, sharp as a tack, and one of the few people in my life who will tell me the truth even when I haven't asked for it. I sat at my kitchen table with my coffee and told her about Christmas, about the fork, about Ava walking away, about the quiet drive home and the 45 minutes in my car. Beverly listened without interrupting. This is unusual for Beverly. It made me nervous. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Robin, do you remember what you told me back in 2018, after Simone got that Teacher of the Year thing at her school?" I thought back. I don't know. What did I say? You said Simone doesn't need me anymore, so I stopped pushing. I turned my coffee cup in my hands. Okay. But Robin, Beverly said slowly, Simone didn't pull away first. You did. She stopped calling as much because she thought you were disappointed about the teaching thing. You know, that she didn't go back and get her doctorate like you suggested. So she got quiet, waiting for you to come around. And you got quiet, feeling like she didn't need you. And then you both just stopped. I opened my mouth to say something. Nothing came out. She wasn't the one who put the distance there, Beverly said. You both did. But baby, you went first. I sat with that for a long time. Outside the window, Atlanta was gray and still, the way it gets between Christmas and New Year's when everyone is waiting for the year to officially end so they can start pretending things will be different. I thought about Ida May putting an extra piece of chicken on the plate. I thought about Dot folding a scholarship letter and saying nothing. I thought about a little girl running home with a drawing that had a crown on her mother's head. And I thought, how many ways are there to love someone and still leave them feeling alone? Apparently, we had been finding out for 3 generations. The thing about patterns is that they don't feel like patterns when you're inside them. They feel like love. That is the hardest part to explain. To Simone, to myself, to anyone who has never been caught inside one. When I pushed, it felt like caring. When I compared, it felt like motivation. When I held the bar high and kept moving it higher, I genuinely believed I was giving my daughter something my mother had failed to give me. Someone who expected great things from her. I did not understand, not for a very long time, that expectation without affirmation is just another word for pressure. And pressure, applied to a child who is already trying her hardest, doesn't build strength. It just teaches her to hide. Let me tell you about the specific shape of what I did, because generational wounds are never vague. They are always made of moments, small ones mostly, the kind that don't look like much from the outside but land differently on the inside, and then stay there, quiet and patient, for decades. Simone was 9 years old when she stopped showing me her drawings. I told you that. What I didn't tell you is what happened in the months after. She didn't stop drawing. She kept drawing, filling notebook after notebook, but she kept them in her backpack, then in a box in her closet. Then eventually, I found this out 30 years later, in a locked diary she kept under her mattress because she was 9 years old and had already learned that certain parts of herself were safer kept hidden. 9 years old. I did not know this until her therapist gently surfaced it. And when I heard it, something shifted under my feet like ground that had seemed solid suddenly wasn't. When Simone was 14, she came home one afternoon to find me on the phone with Beverly, talking about Devin's school performance. He was 2 years ahead of her, already taking AP classes, already being courted by the kind of colleges that send thick envelopes. I was proud of him, genuinely and completely, the way I always was with Devin. And it was in my voice, that pride, unmistakable. Simone stood in the doorway of the kitchen for a moment. I saw her. I held up a finger, 1 minute, and kept talking. She went upstairs without saying hello. I finished my call. I made dinner. I called them both down to eat. I did not notice, not once, that something had shifted in the way Simone looked at me across the table that night. Or if I noticed, I filed it under teenagers and moved on. When Simone was 17 and got her Spelman letter, the moment I already told you about, the light going out of her face, what I did not know was that she had also applied to 2 other schools. Schools with stronger art programs. Schools where she had imagined, privately, studying the thing she actually loved. She withdrew those applications after our conversation in the kitchen. She didn't tell me this for 20 years. Simone was 16. Junior year, the fall semester, November. The kind of gray Atlanta November where the days get short fast and the darkness comes in earlier than you expect. I was working late those days. James and I had just bought the bigger house on Westview Drive, and money was tighter than we'd anticipated. And I was taking every overtime shift the county social services office would give me. I was tired in the way you get tired when you are trying to hold too many things at once and none of them can be set down. I came home one evening to find Simone's progress report on the kitchen counter. She had left it there herself, which told me something. She wasn't hiding it, which meant she thought it was acceptable. It wasn't bad. A B+ in AP English, A- in history, A in art, but a C+ in pre-calculus. James would have looked at that report card and said, 3 A's and a B+, that's my girl. Let's figure out the math together. I looked at it and said when Simone came downstairs, what happened in pre-calc? She explained. She'd struggled with a particular unit. She was working with a tutor. She thought she had it handled. Devin never had trouble with math, I said. Not meanly, almost absently, the way you say something you've said so many times it stops having weight. You might want to ask him to walk you through it. Simone looked at me for a moment. Okay, she said, and went back upstairs. What I did not know, what I could not have known, because she never told me, because I had never made it safe to tell me, was that upstairs in that bathroom, on that gray November evening, my 16-year-old daughter pressed her fingernails into the skin of her forearm until the feeling in her chest became manageable again. Once, just once. She has been clear about that, in the years since. It was not a pattern, not a crisis in the clinical sense. It was a single moment of a teenager who had no language for what she was feeling, and no safe person to feel it with, finding the only way she knew to make the pressure stop. But it happened, and I was downstairs making dinner, not knowing. That is twist 2, if you are keeping count. But I don't think of it as a twist anymore. I think of it as a door that was always there in my house that I walked past every day for 30 years and never once tried to open. Simone found Dr. Patricia Osei when she was 35. Her marriage to Darnell was struggling, not catastrophically, not the kind of struggling that ends things, but the quiet kind that builds up in the spaces between two people who love each other but keep bumping against the same walls. They went to couples therapy first. Dr. Osei was their couples therapist. After 6 months, Darnell's stuff was mostly resolved. Simone's kept going deeper. Dr. Osei, a Ghanaian-American woman with a calm that I am told is almost supernatural in its steadiness, spent 8 months going backward with my daughter before she went forward. 8 months of unpacking the architecture of how Simone had learned to move through the world. What was safe to share, what needed to be hidden, when love could be trusted, and when it came with conditions. Simone told me later that the first time she articulated it clearly, she cried for an hour after the session. What she said was, "I grew up feeling like I was always auditioning for my mother's love, and I never got the part." She was 35 years old when she found words for something she had felt since she was 9. By 2023, the arithmetic of our relationship looked like this. Simone lived 22 minutes from my house by car. We saw each other on average every 3 weeks. Phone calls were short. Logistics, mostly. Can you watch Ava Saturday? Did you get my text about Thanksgiving? She never called to tell me things that were going well. She never called when something was wrong. I told myself this was normal, that adult children have their own lives, that Simone was busy, teaching full-time, raising Ava, keeping her marriage healthy, doing all of it with a grace that I noticed but rarely said out loud. What I did not let myself examine too closely was the quality of her presence when we were together, the way she laughed easily with Darnell, with her friends, with Ava, open and unguarded, her full self on display. And the way that when I walked into a room, something in her posture changed almost imperceptibly. Not cold, not unfriendly, just braced, like someone who had learned to expect impact. Darnell noticed. He is a perceptive man, Darnell. Quieter than Simone, an engineer by training, the kind of person who understands systems and how they fail. He had noticed the pattern for years. He had, I learned later, gently encouraged Simone more than once to have a real conversation with me. "She loves you," he would tell her. "She just doesn't know what she's doing." Simone's response, according to Simone, "I know, that's almost the saddest part." There is a photograph on the wall in Simone's living room that I have looked at many times without really seeing. It was taken in Savannah 2 summers ago. Simone, Darnell, Ava on the beach, the 3 of them laughing at something. All of them sunlit and unguarded and so clearly, completely happy that it looks like a painting of what a family is supposed to feel like. I was not on that trip. I had not been invited. I noticed the photograph the first time I visited after they got back. I didn't say anything. Simone didn't mention it. It sat between us like a lot of things sat between us, acknowledged by neither, felt by both. On Christmas night, driving home alone, I thought about that photograph. I thought about how Ava had looked running to Darnell's arms when we'd finished dinner, the pure, unself-conscious ease of a child running towards someone safe. The way she'd reached up for his face with both hands and said something that made him laugh. I thought about whether my daughter had ever run toward me that way, whether Simone had ever reached up for my face. I thought, when did she stop? And the worst question, the one I hadn't let myself ask until I was alone in a dark car on Christmas night, did I make it stop? The moment that finally cracked things open came 12 days after Christmas. It was not dramatic. These things rarely are. I was at Simone's house on a Wednesday evening dropping off a coat Ava had left at my place. I wasn't staying. I had my purse over my shoulder, keys in my hand, the particular posture of someone who knows they're not quite welcome to linger. Simone was helping Ava with a school project at the kitchen table. Darnell was somewhere else in the house. It was an ordinary evening in every way. Ava was making a poster about her family history for school. It was due Friday. The poster had photographs and captions and a little hand-drawn family tree, and Ava had been working on it for 2 weeks with the kind of serious dedication that 9-year-olds bring to things that feel important to them. I set the coat on the chair, said hello, looked at the poster. It was beautiful, genuinely, carefully, lovingly made. And before I could stop myself, before I could think, before I could remember the car, the Christmas night, the 45 minutes in the dark, I said, "Sweetheart, your great-grandmother Ida May's name is spelled wrong. There's no E on the end." Ava looked at her poster. Her face did the thing I recognized, the thing I had seen on Simone's face 100 times. She picked up her eraser without saying anything and started to fix it. And Simone looked up at me. Not with anger, that would have been easier. With something quieter, something that looked more than anything else like exhaustion. "Mom," she said. Her voice was completely even. "She worked really hard on this." "I know she did. I just noticed." "I know what you noticed." We looked at each other across the kitchen table. For the first time in a very long time, neither of us looked away first. "Mom," Simone said, and her voice had changed, gone softer and more careful, the way a voice goes when someone is deciding whether to say the true thing. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you happy? When you come over here, do you leave feeling good?" The question hit me somewhere unexpected. I opened my mouth and closed it again. "Because I want you to," Simone said. "I want you to come here and feel good. I want Ava to have a grandmother she runs to. I want—" She stopped, pressed her lips together. "I just think we need to talk. Really talk. Not now, not like this, but soon." I nodded. I picked up my purse. I said goodnight to Ava, who said goodnight back in a small voice without looking up from her poster. I drove home. This time I only sat in the car for 15 minutes. Progress, I suppose. I tried to write a letter first. I sat at my kitchen table on a Thursday morning in January with a yellow legal pad and a blue pen, and I started to write. The first draft began. "Simone, I want you to understand why I did what I did." I got to the end of the first page and read it back. It was 12 paragraphs of explaining myself. Not one question. Not one moment of genuine curiosity about her experience. Just 12 paragraphs of a woman defending herself to a jury that hadn't been asked to convict her of anything. I tore it up. I called Beverly. "Don't write to explain," Beverly said, in the particular tone she uses when she has been waiting for you to ask. "Write to ask, or better yet, call. You can't hide behind your word choices on the phone the same way." "What do I ask?" Beverly was quiet for a moment. "Ask her to tell you. And then, this is the hard part, Robin. Don't respond. Don't defend. Don't explain. Don't reframe. Just listen like you're hearing it for the first time. Because for her, she's been waiting her whole life to say it." I sat with that for 3 days. The call happened on a Tuesday evening in January, which felt appropriate somehow, given that the important letters in our family always arrived on Tuesdays. I dialed Simone at 7:30. She picked up on the third ring. "Hey, Mom. Everything okay?" That greeting, "Everything okay?" told me everything about what she expected from my calls. That they came with news, problems, things that needed handling. "No," I said. "Everything is not okay, and I think it's been not okay for a long time, and I've been pretending I didn't know why." A silence, then, "Mom, I'm not calling to explain myself," I said, and I kept my voice steady through sheer force of will. "I'm calling because I want to hear from you, really hear you, if you're willing." Another silence, longer. Later, Simone told me what she was doing during that silence. She was standing in her kitchen, and she looked down the hallway toward Ava's room, where Ava was asleep, and she thought about a drawing of a family under a purple sky. She thought about the shoebox of her own childhood drawings she still had in her closet, the ones she had hidden from me. She thought, "Do I believe her? Do I believe this is different?" She decided, not with certainty, but with something like hope, to try. "Okay, Mom, but I need you to listen, not respond, not explain, just listen." "Okay, do you promise?" I held the phone with both hands. "I promise." "Okay," Simone said, and she began. She talked for 40 minutes. I want to tell you that I was perfectly still and calm and present. That is not entirely true. There were moments, several of them, when my mouth opened and the defense rose in my throat like a tide. I never meant it that way. I was trying to help. You have to understand what I came from. But I had promised, and I held the promise with everything I had. So I heard about the drawing at age 9. Not just the incident itself. I knew the incident. but what it felt like from inside it. What it felt like to be 9 years old and hand your mother something you had made with love. Something with a crown on her head because she was the most important person in the world, and have her notice the wrong thing. "I thought," Simone said, and her voice was careful, measured, the voice of someone who had rehearsed this and was still finding it hard, "that there was something wrong with the things I made, that my way of seeing things was the wrong way." So I started hiding it. I heard about the Spellman letter. I heard about the art school applications she had withdrawn. I heard that for years, into her 30s, she could not take a compliment without immediately waiting for the qualification. That she still sometimes, in the middle of doing something well, heard my voice asking whether Devin had done it better. And then she told me about November, junior year of high school. She told me quietly, without dramatics. The way you tell a fact that you have made peace with, mostly, but that still lives in you somewhere. "I'm not telling you this to hurt you," she said. "I'm telling you because Dr. Osei says the things we keep secret have more power than the things we say out loud. And I've kept this secret for 22 years, and I'm tired of carrying it alone." I did not speak. I was sitting at my kitchen table, the same table where I had tried to write that letter, where I had drunk 40 years of morning coffee, where I had helped Devin with his homework and signed Simone's permission slips and paid the bills and lived the ordinary daily life of a mother who thought she was doing fine. And I was crying. Not delicate, dignified crying. The other kind. The kind that comes up from somewhere you forgot was there, that tastes like decades, that sounds like a woman finally hearing the thing she needed to hear, even though it was the hardest thing she had ever been asked to receive. Simone heard me. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said gently, "Mom, are you okay?" And I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because there it was again. The same question she always asked when she called. The same worried reflex. "No," I said, for the second time that night. "But I think I might be. Eventually." After we hung up, I sat at the table for a long time. Outside, Atlanta was dark and cold. Inside, something had shifted in the air of my house. Something I couldn't name yet, but could feel. The particular quality of a silence that comes after something true has been said. I was 67 years old, and I had just been taught, by my 37-year-old daughter, how to listen. I thought about Ida May putting a piece of chicken on a plate. I thought about Dot folding a letter and saying nothing. I thought about all the Tuesdays stretching back through 3 generations of women who loved hard and spoke little, and left the most important things unsaid until it was too late to say them. I thought, not this Tuesday, not anymore. 2 weeks after the phone call, Simone came over on a Saturday morning. She came alone. No Darnell, no Ava, just my daughter, in her gray wool coat, and her natural hair pulled back the way she wears it when she isn't performing for anyone, parking in my driveway at 9:15 in the morning like she had done 1,000 times before, except that this time felt entirely different from every other time. I had been awake since 5. I had thought carefully about what to make. Not the elaborate Sunday spread I usually prepared when Simone visited. The kind of meal that announced itself, that said, "Look how much I did for you," before anyone sat down. Instead, I made oatmeal, steel cut, with brown sugar and sliced bananas, the way Simone had asked for it every single Saturday morning from age 6 to age 16, and fresh squeezed orange juice, because she had told me once, offhandedly, in a conversation I apparently remembered better than she expected, that store-bought tasted like regret. I had set the table simply. No good china, just the everyday plates. When she walked through the door and saw the kitchen, the oatmeal, the orange juice, the ordinary plates, something crossed her face that I couldn't quite read. Not quite surprise, something softer. "You remembered," she said. "I remember more than you think," I said. "I just didn't always show it the right way." She took off her coat. We sat down. We ate. For a few minutes, neither of us said anything of consequence. The weather, Ava's school project, it had come back with a gold star, which made me close my eyes briefly in something that was equal parts gratitude and grief. Normal conversation, the kind that fills space while 2 people gather themselves for the real thing. Then Simone reached into the tote bag she'd brought and placed something on the table between us. A small notebook, hardcover, forest green, the corners soft with age. The kind of notebook you find in a drugstore, nothing special about it except that it was clearly old, clearly handled, clearly important. I looked at it without touching it. Darnell found it, Simone said, when we were clearing out the storage unit last month. It was in that box of Grandma Dot's things you gave me after she passed. I don't think you knew it was in there. What is it? Read the first page. I opened the notebook carefully, the way you open something that has been waiting a long time. My mother's handwriting, shaky the way it had gotten in her last years. Parkinson's had come for her hands before it came for anything else, which was its own particular cruelty for a woman who had spent 35 years writing patient charts. The letters leaned into each other like they were tired. March 3rd, 2017. I am trying to figure out how to say something to Robin that I have needed to say for 30 years. I don't know why it is so hard. Ida May never said sorry to anyone in her life. I don't know if she knew the word. I know the word. I've known it for years. I just can't find the door. I stopped reading, looked up at Simone. She was watching me with steady eyes. I looked back down. March 3rd, 2017. I have been thinking about the time Robin made the cheerleading team. She was so happy. I could see it. That girl was lit up like a candle. And I told her not to let it distract her from her grades. I watched the light go out and I thought, good, she needs to be focused. Now I think, what was wrong with me? What was wrong with me? She was 16 years old and she was happy and I couldn't just let her be happy. I have to tell her. I keep saying I'll tell her next Sunday. Next Sunday comes and goes and I make dinner and we talk about other things and I still haven't said it. I don't know how to start. There were more entries. 7 pages written over the course of 2 years, the handwriting getting progressively more difficult to read as her hands got worse. The same theme moving through all of them, circling and circling the same unreached destination. I know I was hard on her. I know it wasn't right. I need to find the words. The last entry was dated November 14th, 2018. Robin came for Sunday dinner today. She made my favorite, the lemon cake. She was kind to me. She is always kind to me. I don't deserve it sometimes. I kept thinking today, tell her today. We sat on the porch after and she held my hand because my hands were shaking bad and she didn't say anything about it, just held them. I should have said it then. I should have said, Robin, I did the best I could and my best wasn't good enough and I am sorry. But I didn't say it. I don't know what I'm afraid of. Maybe I'm afraid she'll say it's okay. And I'll know she means it. And I'll have to figure out what to do with all the years I spent not saying it. Dot died on March 7th, 2019. 4 months after that last entry. Next Sunday never came. I closed the notebook. I set it carefully on the table, as if it were something that could break, and I put both my hands flat on the wood on either side of it. The kitchen was very quiet. Outside, a car went by. A dog barked somewhere down the street. The ordinary sounds of a Saturday morning in Atlanta, continuing without reference to the fact that something significant was happening inside this particular house. She knew, I said. My voice came out strange, scraped thin. She knew for years. She just couldn't find the door, Simone said softly. She wrote that. She couldn't find the door. I nodded, pressed my lips together, looked at my hands on the table. That's why I'm here, Mom, Simone said. Not to hurt you, not to... I don't want this to be a painful thing we did to each other that we never come back from. I'm here because I don't want us to be them. I don't want to be sitting somewhere in 20 years writing in a notebook about everything I should have said to you. Something loosened in my chest. Something that had been held tight for so long I had stopped noticing the tension. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. Not the way you look at someone when you're assessing or planning or worrying or comparing. The way you look at someone when you are willing to simply see what is there. She was 38 years old. She had her father's mouth, James's particular way of holding her chin slightly up when she was being brave. She had lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. The lines of a woman who laughs hard and thinks deeply and has earned every one of them. She was wearing a sweater she'd had since graduate school, soft and slightly pilled at the elbows. And she was watching me with the careful, open face of someone who had decided to be vulnerable one more time, even though vulnerable had not always been safe with me. She was extraordinary. She had always been extraordinary. I had spent so much time measuring her that I had nearly missed seeing her. Simone, I said. Mom, I took a breath, let it out. You were right, I said. About all of it. She went very still. The scorecard, the comparisons, the way I made you feel like you had to earn something that should have just been yours from the beginning. No questions, no conditions. I paused. My throat was tight, but I kept going. I thought I was preparing you. I thought pushing meant I believed in you. I didn't know, I genuinely did not know, that what you were feeling was that you were never enough. If I had known, I stopped myself, because I had been about to say, if I had known, I would have done it differently. And that might even be true. But it wasn't the point right now. The point right now was not my intentions. The point was her experience. Those are two different things, and I had spent 68 years treating them as the same thing, and I was done. I'm sorry, I said. Just that. 2 words. No, but I meant well. No, but you have to understand where I came from. No, but I did my best. Just I'm sorry. Simone looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes were bright. She blinked once, slowly, and I watched a single tear track down her left cheek, and she didn't wipe it away. I know you did, she said finally. Her voice was steady and soft. I know you did your best, and I also know that your best hurt me. Both of those things are true at the same time. Yes, I said, they are. I'm not saying this to punish you. I know. I'm saying it because I need you to actually know it. Not just apologize for it and move on, but know it in a way that changes something. I understand. She studied my face. Do you? I'm going to spend the rest of however much time I have left making sure I do, I said. I can't fix what already happened, but I can stop adding to it. And I want to... My voice broke slightly, and I let it, because Beverly had told me once that women in our family break our own voices before anyone else can do it, and I was trying to stop doing that. I want to know you, not the version of you I planned for, the version that's actually sitting here. Simone was quiet for a moment. Then she reached across the table and put her hand over mine. Not a formal gesture, not a careful gesture. The way you reach for someone when the reaching is the whole point. Okay, Mom, she said. Let's try that. We didn't say anything else for a while. We sat in my kitchen with the oatmeal going cold and the orange juice warming up and my mother's notebook between us on the table, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, the silence between Simone and me was not a distance. It was just quiet. The good kind. 6 months later, it is summer. Atlanta in July is aggressive about itself. Thick heat, sky so blue it looks painted, the smell of cut grass and someone's barbecue drifting through every open window. Simone's backyard is small and shaded by 2 enormous oaks, and on Saturday mornings, when Ava doesn't have her swim lessons until 11, the 3 of us sometimes sit out there with coffee and do nothing in particular. We call it Coffee Saturdays. It started as a deliberate thing. Simone suggested it, gently, as a way of building something regular, something low stakes and uncharged. Now it has become simply a thing we do, the way families accumulate rituals without meaning to, small repeated acts that end up meaning everything. Not every Saturday. Simone has her life, and I have mine. And part of what I am learning, slowly and with difficulty, is that her having a life that doesn't include me is not rejection. It is just her life. But most Saturdays, enough Saturdays. Here is what is different now, and I want to be honest about how it is different. Because I am not going to stand here and tell you that I transformed overnight into someone else. That is not how this works. That is not how anything works. I still catch myself sometimes. The old reflex, quick as a blink. She should be doing that differently. She could be doing more. Did she see that Devin just... The difference is that now I catch it. There is a small half-second pause that wasn't there before. A moment of recognition, like a hand on my shoulder saying, hold on. Is this helping, or is this the thing? Most of the time I choose to hold it, to say nothing or to say something different. Sometimes I don't catch it fast enough and the old words get out, and when that happens, I've learned to notice Simone's face, the microscopic shift, the almost bracing, and I've learned to stop myself mid-sentence and say, I'm sorry, let me try that again. This sounds small. It is not small. In my family, for 3 generations, we did not stop mid-sentence. We did not say, let me try that again. We said the thing and moved on and let the residue settle where it settled. Stopping is new. Stopping is enormous. Stopping is what it looks like when a pattern begins to end. Simone told Dr. Osei about Coffee Saturdays. Patricia asked, how does it feel having that with your mom? Simone thought about it for a moment. She told me this story herself, offered it freely on a Saturday morning when Ava was inside getting more juice. That particular quality of openness she has started to show me that still surprises me every single time. "It feels," she said slowly, "like I finally stopped waiting for something." And then I looked up and realized it had already arrived. Beverly, for her part, said, "You look lighter, Robin." We were having dinner at her kitchen table on a Thursday in June, the same table where we'd been having dinner on Thursdays since 1982, and she was looking at me with the particular attention she brings to things she has been waiting to say. "Lighter," I repeated. "Is that what it looks like from the outside?" "That's what it looks like." Beverly poured more sweet tea. "Like you put something down that you'd been carrying so long you forgot you were carrying it." I thought about that. About Ida May and her extra piece of chicken. About Dot and her locked notebook full of unsaid "I'm sorries." About all the ways a wound can travel through a family, not because anyone chose to pass it on, but because no one knew how to stop it. "I think that's exactly what it is," I said. "Here is the last thing I want to tell you. It happened 3 weeks ago on a Saturday in Simone's backyard. Ava was drawing. She draws constantly, has her mother's gift for it. Fills notebooks the same way Simone used to fill them, except that now nobody hides them, and nobody is told the sky is the wrong color. She was working on something elaborate, bent over her paper with the fierce concentration of a child engaged in important work, and I was sitting nearby with my coffee, watching her in the way I am learning to watch people I love. Without agenda, without assessment, without the constant low hum of how does this measure up, just watching. Ava was drawing a family. I could see it taking shape, figures on a lawn, a house behind them, a sky above. The sky was purple, bright, vivid, unapologetic purple, the color of something chosen deliberately, with joy. My mouth opened. I felt the words forming in the back of my throat, the familiar reflex, the well-worn groove. "Ava, honey, skies aren't purple." And I stopped. I held it, let it pass through me without letting it out. Then I leaned forward and I asked, "Tell me about this picture, baby." Ava looked up. Her face opened up the way a child's face opens when they realize they have been genuinely asked, not tested, not corrected, asked. "The sky is purple," she said, with the matter-of-fact confidence of a 9-year-old who has not yet learned to doubt her own seeing, "because that's what it looks like when you're happy. Like when everything feels really good and warm. That's what color the sky gets." She looked at her picture, then at me. "Grandma, have you ever seen a purple sky?" I looked at the drawing, the small figures on the lawn, the house with its yellow windows, and above it all, that wide, extravagant, unapologetically purple sky. One of the figures on the lawn had silver hair. She had drawn me in. "I think I'm starting to," I said. "I am 68 years old and I am learning things I should have known at 30. That is the honest truth of it, and I am done being ashamed of it. There is a version of this story where I tell you that I figured it out in time, that I caught myself before any real damage was done, that everything is healed and whole, and the past has been neatly resolved. That version would be easier to tell. It would probably also be more comfortable to hear. But that's not what happened. What happened is that I loved my daughter imperfectly for 38 years, in ways that left marks that will not fully disappear. What happened is that my mother loved me imperfectly for 63 years, and took her unspoken apologies to her grave. What happened is that Ida Mae Collins, born in Mississippi in 1918 with nothing and no one to teach her that tenderness was survivable, set something in motion that traveled through 3 generations of women before anyone managed to stop it. We are not entirely healed. I want to be clear about that. There are still moments between Simone and me that are careful, that carry the particular weight of history between them. There are things I said to her when she was 9, 14, 16, 29, that live in her body in ways that our conversations cannot entirely undo. Healing is not the same as erasure. The work of it is slower and less complete than the stories we tell about it usually admit. But something has stopped. That is what I want you to understand. That is the only thing I am certain of, sitting in my kitchen on a summer morning in Atlanta with my coffee and my mother's green notebook and the sound of a world that is continuing to move forward whether I am ready or not. Something has stopped. Dot kept a notebook full of doors she couldn't find. Ida Mae never learned the word. The wound traveled because no one in its path knew how to turn and face it directly, to say, "This is what I did, and it was wrong, and I am sorry," without qualification. without caveat, without the protective softening of but. I faced it. Late, later than I should have, later than Simone deserved. But I faced it. And now there is a 9-year-old girl in Atlanta who draws purple skies without apology, who shows her drawings to whoever wants to see them, who lives in a house where the first question is not how did you do, but how do you feel? Who is growing up with a mother who learned, who had to fight to learn, who had to sit with a therapist for 3 years to unpack the architecture of her own childhood and find her way to language for it. That love without conditions is not softness. It is the whole point. What gets passed down through families is not always what we choose to pass down. The silence passes. The comparison passes. The particular way a woman holds her love slightly out of reach, just far enough that the children spend their lives reaching. That passes too, generation to generation, quiet as weather, relentless as water finding the low place. But so does the stopping, so does the turning around. So does one woman in one generation deciding that the notebook will not stay locked, that next Sunday will be this Sunday, that the words "I'm sorry" are not a defeat but a door, and that she will walk through it even if her hands are shaking, even if she is 68 years old and arriving later than she should have. That passes down too. That is what I am giving Ava. Not perfection, not a grandmother who always says the right thing. I will fail at that. I already have. I will again. But the living proof that the cycle can be seen and named and stopped. That the women in this family do not have to keep carrying what was handed to them without their consent. That there is another way. Ava doesn't know she is the reason I'm telling this story. She is 9 years old and she is drawing purple skies, and she does not yet know what it cost the women before her to make the world she is growing up in. One day I'll tell her. One day I'll sit with her the way I should have sat with her mother, all the way back at the beginning, and I'll say, "Let me tell you about your great-great-grandmother Ida May, and what she carried, and what she passed to Dot, and what Dot passed to me, and what I almost passed to your mother before I finally stopped." And I'll tell her, "You are the purple sky. Every generation that finally breaks a cycle is.